It's 2008, you have been working at your startup for over a year and you made no real progress so far. You gave yourself a 3 months ultimatum to make real money or you will abandon your idea. The co-founder of Y Combinator told you that your idea is terrible. But then you fast forward 15 years and your company is valued more than $70 billion and it's called Airbnb. How did this happen? This is the story of how Airbnb went from zero to a legendary business thanks to stubbornness and manual, non-scalable actions. In failure, Brian, Joe, and Nathan found the springboard for extraordinary success, demonstrating that even from the ashes of challenges, a global enterprise can rise. Let's start from the beginning, where most failures usually are. It's 2007, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, both design graduates, are running out of money, like postgrads tend to do, especially when they move to San Francisco, where even at the time, rental costs were insane. From these challenges, the idea of Airbnb is born. The house they're renting is quite big, maybe even too big for 2 people, and there is a pretty big design conference coming up. So why not use the free space to accommodate the attendees of that design conference? So they got some air mattresses and posted an ad on Craigslist, the most popular classifieds website in the United States. Now the big question was, who is gonna accept to sleep in a room sublet by 2 complete strangers with 2 other people? They thought they were gonna get hippie backpackers, but instead they got 3 very different people from what they expected. Mia, a woman from Boston that was working as a software engineer, John, an entrepreneur, father of 5 from Utah, and Ravi, an IT consultant. Not really the typical 3 hippies you would expect. These were the first 3 guests of Bed and Breakfast, Airbnb's first name. As you usually do when you are getting started with your business, you go above and beyond. So the 2 co-founders for $80 a night did not just offer accommodation, they offered an experience. And we're not talking about the experience that every startup promises nowadays because they have a great onboarding process or a stunning UX. Brian and Joe actually showed the guests around San Francisco and taught them about local culture, local food. These were pretty concrete experiences that made them realize that travelers do not just want a cozy place to stay and some standard amenities. There was a lot more behind just the renting of air mattresses. They started thinking, what if we make it possible for other people to share their experience and host guests in their homes and show them around the city? They got a 3rd co-founder on board, Nathan, who actually built the platform, and as you do, they built a business. This is when, for the first time, the manual, non-scalable actions I talked about at the beginning actually come back in the story. Because instead of investing in paid ads on Google or social that they didn't have the money for, the co-founders decided to manually start reaching out to potential hosts to onboard to their platform. They would email everyone that would post on Craigslist to offer their home for a bed and breakfast or for short-term rental, asking them if they wanted to list their accommodation on Bed and Breakfast. It was low cost and it worked. That's everything they needed to know. It worked so well that to this day, this is probably the most used example of a growth hack when people ask to explain what the hell it actually means. Of course, after the initial success, they coded up an automated tool that did the same thing they were doing, but automatically. This started to work really well. They refined the copy, they made the onboarding simpler, the sign-up simpler, and everything became extremely user-friendly. In the meantime, with way too many months of delay, they actually realized that airbeds are the spawn of the devil. They are way too uncomfortable to actually exist, and so they started using real beds in their listings as well. In the summer of 2008, they finally perfected the product. They allowed people to book homes from anywhere in the world. They kept following a simple rule. You should be able to book a room with 3 clicks maximum. Making the process simple was essential. It was the whole wave that Steve Jobs started during the iPod and then eventually iPhone era. So they built a pretty reliable way to acquire hosts, to gather the supply, but as it usually happens with a marketplace, the other side was not as strong. They were having issues to create enough demand to satisfy the hosts that were now on their platform. So they kind of went back from where they started. They went where demand for accommodation is always present. Big events, conferences like at the beginning. At the time, actually, thousands of people were about to attend the Democratic National Convention with Barack Obama in Denver. That was the place they went to. So now the challenge was, how do we let the attendees know about us? How do they even know that they can book a room on our platform. They did what a lot of startups do and dabbled in PR, trying to go to the New York Times, but got rejected. And so they decided to aim a little bit lower, and they tried with local newspapers. They were ignored again. Back to the scrappy and manual ways, they started contacting small bloggers and writers. They asked even students to write about them in their school newspapers. So once again, all of this manual, scrappy work paid off, and they got about 80 bookings for the Democratic National Convention. That's not bad. So finally, they had a winning formula to also gather the demand. Leverage big events where demand for accommodation is always present. And it seemed like luck struck again when they realized that also the Republican National Convention was about to happen. It felt like a no-brainer to reuse the same playbook, and that's exactly what they did. Again, they did the same things, and incredibly, they went from 80 bookings to 2 bookings this time. Just when they thought that things were going smoothly, that things were gonna go well, things didn't. Funds were running low. They still believe in the idea, but they needed to make money now. To the rescue, once again, the presidential elections actually. They created 2 limited editions of cereal brands, Obama O's and Cap McCain's, the 2 main candidates for the 2008 election. And these cereals were more than just breakfast. They were a great marketing play. So they decided to sell these Obama cereals at $40 a box, leveraging the hype surrounding the Democratic National Convention. On the other side, they also introduced the cereals for McCain, kind of as a playful dig at the Republican candidate. And this was their way of adding sprinkle of humor to the whole campaign. And it certainly caught people's attention. So believe it or not, selling cereal boxes, they went viral and they managed to earn $30,000 in revenue, which felt like a lifesaver at the time, because this unexpected success not only allowed them to clear the $10,000 in bank debt that they have, but also to sustain their operations for quite a while. But things were still not going as smoothly as they wanted. They were still looking for funding. And so in 2009, they actually started looking at Y Combinator. The story is pretty funny. I do believe that Justin Kan, one of the co-founders of Twitch, actually talks about it in one of his YouTube videos that I'm gonna try and link below. They actually missed the deadline to apply for Y Combinator. They got in for 2 main reasons. One is that Justin sent an email to Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, telling him that they had been advising them and that they were really cool guys and that they should accept them. So definitely this warm intro helped. But also, Paul Graham was overall very impressed by the stubbornness of these guys and how they managed to raise $30,000 by selling cereal boxes. And so they were accepted, even though he thought that their idea was terrible. If they could convince someone to buy a cereal box for $40, they could convince someone to stay in a room with strangers. So Y Combinator agreed to let Airbnb into its program and also provided them with the first real funding of $20,000. Paul Graham played an instrumental role in Airbnb's development. He provided the founders with the advice and mentorship that they needed. He helped them improve their business model, and he also validated part of what they've been doing until that moment and told them that it's okay for a business service like theirs to do things that do not scale. All you have to do is to have 100 people that absolutely love your product, and they'll tell another 100 people, and they'll tell another 100 people. This is really the approach that they started going for during Y Combinator. So they started focusing on existing passionate followers. This is why they started looking a lot more at New York City. New York was probably their biggest market, where they had the most hosts that actually liked their product. And so they spent the little money that they had at the time to go there and discover the major problems with their platform. One of them being the low quality photos in the listing and how poorly presented the houses were. So armed with a camera, they personally visited each advertiser to take better photos and to publish them. Thanks to this, they doubled or tripled monthly bookings on the platform, and overall their turnover in New York City doubled as well. The founders realized that the same problem was hindering bookings in all the other cities around the world, in Paris, in London, Vancouver. So they started hiring professional photographers that would go and take professional pictures of the spaces that were published on Airbnb. It was very costly at the time, but they had an immediate return on investment. As these problems got fixed and unit economics started working, expansion was really around the corner. It unlocked what the founders thought from the beginning, that the power of network behind something like Airbnb is incredible. People would travel to New York from all over the world, and then they would go back home and they would want to become host. The experience was so good that Airbnb as a concept started spreading as a virus. They also started doing more traditional marketing with events and PR. After the pictures, they started stepping up on every other aspect of the business. Another huge change is that in addition to shared spaces, they started listing entire rental accommodations. So the platform started to become independent of just big special events, and this is really when it became attractive to investors. Maybe also because they started getting it more, right? People that were mostly in their 30s or 40s, rich, they related less to the need of renting a room because you wanted to go to an event and you couldn't afford a luxury hotel. They definitely related more to the idea of renting a full house apartment for yourself where you had all the amenities you needed, and you also felt more at home even when traveling. One of the first ones to notice them was, of course, Sequoia Capital. The first big investment arrived through them in March 2009 when they received a seed round of around $500,000, valuing the company at $2.4 million. In November 2010, the second investment arrives, valuing the company at $70 million. Just for you to understand the growth that Airbnb had, at the time, they had 700,000 nights booked. 560,000 of those were booked in the previous 6 months. 2011 as a year started pretty strong because in February they hit the huge milestone of 1 million nights booked, and the growth kept being even more staggering. They raised their valuation to $2.9 billion, a number that the three co-founders probably couldn't even imagine just a few months earlier. They had built an amazing growth engine with a lot of defensibility because it's a marketplace, so they had a lot of hosts on their side already. They also started leveraging SEO, which was one of the best channels, but they didn't just start writing articles that were targeting people looking to travel. They went a step forward. They started using programmatic SEO, which at the time was pretty advanced technique. Basically, they started creating a lot of pages automatically that would easily rank because of their domain authority and because of the low competition for a lot of low volume queries that people were looking for in the context of traveling. They had pages for all the neighborhoods where they had houses on, and people would find that on Google and see all the places that they could book in that area. They had it for cities. They really managed to get the two best channels to work at their best: SEO and referral. First time that they tried to introduce a referral program, it actually didn't work that well. Even though it showed promise in the first year, it seemed a bit underwhelming at the beginning. It seemed that referrals didn't really work to generate explosive growth for them, but in reality, they had another issue. How is it possible that a business that gets hundreds of thousands of nights booked on a monthly basis is not fit for referrals, right? It seems like a no-brainer. Word of mouth was already a huge channel for us. And the problem was simply that they were not advertising the program enough. Not a lot of people knew about it. So once again, Airbnb learned from its mistakes and introduced the new version of referrals. The trend was very clear. Everyone was using their mobile phone even to book on Airbnb. So they thought, we need to add this to the phone. So they did it. And now with the new program, people could invite friends in a very personalized way with better visibility and a tweaked message. Airbnb's referral program was an incredible success with a 900% increase in bookings year over year. Airbnb says that after this launch, their daily bookings actually quadrupled. So they kept building on top of this explosive growth. They started hiring staff, opening new offices around the world, and they also started looking a lot more towards Asia, pretty big market. At the beginning of 2012, between January and June, the booking milestone went from 5 million to 10. It seemed like an unstoppable growth. And it was in April 2014 that, with another round led by TPG Capital, the overall valuation reached the milestone of $10 billion. And this is also where this video ends. This is the story of how Airbnb went from 0 to $10 billion in valuation. Feel free to check out all the resources in the description if you want to dig deeper into the story. There are a lot of different sources that say a lot of different things. We try to do our best to really give you an accurate representation of the story of Airbnb. The main lesson for me was maybe really to see how passion and resilience and adaptability can transform a terrible idea into a global success through challenges, failures, and the determination to resolve them. through manual and non-scalable actions. The three founders, Brian, Joe, and Nathan, have demonstrated that even from extremely difficult conditions, extraordinary global entrepreneurship can arise. Airbnb is just another example of how you can build a company around one great insight, especially if most people disagree with it. And I'm sure that Peter Thiel would be proud of me right now. Airbnb's founders basically grasped the importance of creating an authentic experience for guests, not just offering mere accommodations. They understood that people wanted to feel like part of the local culture when they traveled. And so everything that they did was to turn this insight into reality for their users. Again, a lot of problems trying to do that, a lot of challenges, a lot of mistakes, but they kept hammering on that point and eventually built an amazing product. I hoped this story entertained you, sure, but also gave you some idea or lit some fire in you to go and do things at the startup where you currently work or at the company where you currently work. I am making a YouTube video, so I am forced by law to tell you to subscribe and turn on the notification and check out other videos from this channel. That's just how the gig is. This said, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.